Stephen, do tell us about this trafficking ring.
Well, there have been rumors about this, John, for the last few months, some of them coming from Russia with suggestions that there have been Cubans seen fighting in Ukraine and being recruited in Russia to join that. And then what we had last night was a slightly unexpected statement from the Cuban government saying it had detected this human trafficking ring and that it was acting to neutralize it, therefore sort of suggesting that this was an illegal criminal network that was recruiting Cubans unbeknown to the Cuban government. And this fits in with some of the reporting more recently, including from Miami, where a television network on Sunday interviewed two Cubans from Russia who said that they'd been duped into becoming mercenaries or becoming very close to becoming mercenaries by a group that had said, come to Russia, you can join in, we can give you a job in construction inside Ukraine, inside Russian-occupied Ukraine. And when they got there, they found that they were being told to put military uniforms on, given weapons, and expected to be mercenaries. And they then said, look, we're not doing this. And they are now still in Russia. And they say they describe themselves as prisoners of war. So a sort of murky tale of how Russia, it does seem to be attempting to recruit people to fight its war.
Fascinating stories. So we're talking about human trafficking in every sense, not merely smuggling people through borders against all the rules of border control and so on. We're talking about deception of those being misled into going to Russia in the classic human trafficking way.
Yes, and assuming that version is the correct version, it's plausible because, of course, Cuba is undergoing a sort of terrible economic crisis, as bad as happened, ironically, just after the Soviet Union collapsed. So any offer to a Cuban to get around $2,000 a month to do anything in Russia will be quickly taken up. And the person who spoke to this US television network said that there were about 200 Cubans who went with him to Russia, and it does appear that all of them were not fully aware of what they're letting themselves into. But right. It's a classic case, it seems, of taking advantage of a sort of vulnerable and gullible population.
So presumably it would take deception to induce people to do this from Cuba. Back in the days of the Cold War, you could see maybe some sort of affinity between Cuba and Russia at that time, but just not now.
Well, yes and no, actually. I mean, one of the things that's happened because of the Ukraine war and because of this sort of economic massive crisis in Cuba is the two countries have got rather closer together, with Cuba looking for anyone to help them out, and Russia, of course, somewhat isolated, but not isolated from places like Cuba. And it has to be said, been some military cooperation between the two sides. The Cuban defense minister visited Moscow in at the end of June, one of the first people to go there after the Wagner Group sort of attempted coup there. So there's no question that Cuba and Russia are keen to show that they're cooperating, but it's very embarrassing and awkward and sort of against Cuba's supposed principles if it does emerge that Cuban young men are fighting for Russia in Ukraine.